Greetings, my name is Dr. Christopher C. York. I'm a philosophy instructor at Langara College. My research specialty is the philosophy of sports and games, and I'm the founder of the Arena Gauntlet League and precursor leagues, which we'll be discussing on this podcast. This is Leagues Behind, a tournament design webcast that looks to past league designs with the intention to inform future designs and also kind of see where we've been, the mechanics we don't want to repeat, the mechanics that we can't wait to get back to. And I'm very excited to introduce my guest for today, the one, the only, Johnny Mariani, a guy who's been with the league for about 10 years now, since it came to Montreal. He's been there from the very beginning. Welcome, Johnny.
Hey, Chris. Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's get right to it. We're looking way behind today. We decided to take on the first online league that was official, which is Ikoria. Before Ikoria, there was a little unofficial chaos league just to sort of test the parameters to see if it would work online. We did that with a sponsorship from Face to Face Games, which hosted, of course, our physical tournament series in Montreal, where we met. And we didn't record how it all went down. So Ikoria was our first ever official league online. So, Johnny, can you tell me what you remember from this league and any sort of feelings or thoughts you might have about it?
Yeah, so Ikoria was really interesting because, well, at the time, this was like June 2020. So, early pandemic days.
Yes.
And
that's part of the story.
It's just sort of like, trying to figure something out. And it's very much in that context of, well, what else is going on? Not much. I haven't seen any of these other players in, 3 or 4 months. Haven't been in a store in multiple months. And definitely kind of itching to play an event.
Yeah, so this is
in those days.
COVID's the character in the story that kind of lurks in the background and is the causal factor for why we leave the store and go online, right?
Yeah, and at the time, it maybe felt like, okay, we'll just do 1 or 2 leagues until we start going back to stores. But like everyone else, we were pretty naive of how long, lockdowns and stuff would last.
I don't know. Maybe that's just you, Johnny. That's just you because look, I'm looking at the first line in the rule set that I sent you for review, and I'm seeing that already I had delusions of grandeur. We are unmoored from the physical. All I'm doing is seeing the possibilities. This is called the Ikoria Sealed League World Series rule set.
World Series. So I think that maybe, you had a more tentative view about this, and I was like, okay, if we're forced to go online, let's make the best possible, outcome happen here, and sort of play with the possibilities. So I think, again, part of the reason I value your input is that you do have different takes on these things than I do. You're not afraid to tell me, of course, and part of that, right, is I think our attitude towards where the community should go. I think you were one of the people that thought that in the beginning, like if we get over 50 players, it's going to dilute our community, and the online series is going to be just characterless, or it's going to have a bad online culture. Whereas I was like, let's grow it. Let's grow it as big as we can, and then we'll deal with that if it happens. To credit you with being much more ambitious than me in terms of, like you're saying, the scope of like World Series, trying to get people from around the world, and size, where, I think I would have been happy just playing with like 30 people from our local store and continuing with that.
I don't think that would have been sustainable.
Been wrong.
I think, right? I'm trying to think of if we were just still playing cards with the same 30 people, that's not sustainable, because even in the face to face, right, where the league started in Montreal, I mean, there was a bit of player churn. There were people coming in, there were people coming out. If we weren't trying to actively recruit new people, I think it would have been dead on the blocks. But yeah,
we're down to about
or 6 to 8 original people at this point. So yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
when I was digging
Yeah.
through people who'd be available to talk about Ikoria, right? We're a dying breed, Johnny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm happy that we've been able to sustain that sort of strong community feeling somehow, even with the growth from I think Ikoria had 21 officially registered members in the tournament. Very humble beginnings, and now we're seeing on the regular roughly around 100 registrants for each major tournament. So that's not bad growth. We could be. I think that with Modern Horizons 3, we're aiming to get lots of new players in. So we're aiming at growth more ambitiously. I think now that we know that we can sustain it. But yeah, we've come a long way since Ikoria.
And definitely, for Ikoria, because it's the first league, you have to just figure out how to make it work. And it's kind of like a Maslow hierarchy, where first you just got to figure out how to report matches and generate packs,
Yeah.
and that's what like Ikoria was about. And then later on, you can look at social aspects, how to grow, and then how
Right.
to implement various cool ideas and interesting rules. Because Ikoria is like extremely basic, as far as a league design goes.
Right. So looking through the rule set,
But
I'm
it was one of
sorry. Go on.
sorry, I was going to say, the implementation of it was among our hardest because it's the first one.
Right.
You just have to, like, everyone has to learn what we're doing and how are we doing it from scratch.
And how were we doing it? Well, looking back on the rule set, I can see that we're still using screenshots of Draft Sim. So we're generating punishment packs by basically rolling a new pack on Draft Sim as if we're about to draft for realsies. We're taking a screenshot, and that's your random pack. That was the technology at the time. That was before Francesco and Booster Tutor helped us out considerably and streamlined our processes.
It's like hilariously quaint as a method.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's almost as quaint as the physical league, right? So, like, we remember that we used to have paper slips, and you'd have to like open your physical booster pack and write out the contents, and have another player witness your open and basically co-sign your match receipt. And we'd collect those, or Richard would collect those eventually at the store and make a spreadsheet out of them. Primitive times.
What's funny is back in the paper days, towards I guess the last couple of paper leagues, I was getting kind of annoyed with having to fill out these slips, and then putting the little slip in the box and waiting for it to be collected at the end of the week was a little unreliable. And I was definitely toying with the idea of, okay, how do we just have a forum online that people enter? It takes 2 seconds. Things are updated right away. Take a picture of the pack instead of writing out every card name. And there was never enough push to make it happen. But once we're forced online, and then it's like, okay, everything else is changing. Let's change this too. And that ended up being, I felt like a big leap for us when it happened. Be a league or two after this one.
There was one guy at the store. He had glasses. I think his name was Gabriel. He was one of the ones that was suggesting that we go online and have a Discord. One of the first ones before I knew what Discord was. And we were just like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And eventually, I think it was Amir who really encouraged me. Once the pandemic hit, it was Amir Hassan that really, again, from the earlier league in Dubai, who became a transplant in Montreal, partly because I guess I was there to help him kind of get set up. When he kind of pushed me and said, look, now you really have to think about Discord seriously. And I started, he created a sort of beta of what is now the Arena Gauntlet League Discord server. I kind of like took his template, and there were some things I really didn't like or I didn't see working with a larger community. And so I made it a rough skeleton of what it is now. I mean, we keep tweaking it, we keep adding branches. I almost wish we had, like we have these living rule documents we can look back on, for the history of the league. I kind of wish we had snapshots of what the server looked like at different times. I remember one time
that actually,
I went crazy with the emojis one for 1 week, and then everyone's like, "Just calm down there, buddy." And so I took them all out again.
where every channel had its own emoji on it. Yeah.
Some funny moments. These are bits of league lore, I suppose, that if you haven't been here for a while, they mean nothing to you. But at the same time, they're little snapshots of our follies. I think that probably this league is also responsible for a bit of personal development, at least on my part. I was ill-equipped, I think, early on for the burdens of sort of founding an online community. I don't think that. I was out of my depth at times, and to be fair, there's been times when I've had to lean on your advice. You've been my consigliere, so to speak, on various issues. And just so this is a matter of public record, I've said to you privately that if I happen to die or become deeply disinterested in Magic, you're the heir apparent, right? You're the guy that's been there since the beginning. And even though you have this terrible, terrible preference for mono set leagues, which I find dreadfully boring, I still think that you got enough stick in the game, so to speak, or whatever, skin in the game. There we go. To know where we've been and know where we should go next. So I think generally speaking, right, you've kind of you've been a steady second for all these years, and I really want to thank you for your influence and help and patience for when I have been struggling at times to make things work.
Thank you, and I totally echo your point of have learned and some personal growth through developing these leagues and developing board and the server. And a specific example is my Excel skills have blossomed tremendously since 4 years ago of being up at 2 a.m. trying to like how do we make these rules work? Why do we make this so complicated? And having to learn new techniques, which has then helped me, my work life and it's come in handy for sure.
Well, that's another thing too. I think a lot of people who create content or who are part of the LC, they're learning skills they can use in their professional lives. Like, for example, I have some online business lectures that I'm going to be recording later today. If I didn't have this to do first, where I had to figure out how to put a logo in one corner and you in the other, I don't think it would be as pretty or as well put together, because I'm doing this for fun, right? So I'm putting more effort into making this show happen, and as a result, it's going to be easier for me to do my work later on today. So I do think this all.
And better to learn here.
Yeah, and I mean,
better to learn here than with in the business setting.
Right, where these mistakes might have consequences or whatever. Yeah, so it's a little playground for most of us. Shall we get back to Ikoria in particular? When sifting through the rule set, did anything sort of strike you at all, like or I guess what kind of struck me is how kind of close to its final form it is already at this point. Like, despite some of the archaic procedures and software that we use, I'm really surprised. Like, it's kind of kept its form over time.
Yeah, the basic rules are the same. Like, there's 5 steps. Open a seal pool, make a 60-card deck, a 3-game match against an opponent. If you win, you generate a pack for the loser. If you lose, you get the pack, add it to your pool. Play 5 matches a week. Play until you make top 8 or until you get 11 losses and are eliminated.
Right.
Like
that's the formula.
So basic formula. That hasn't changed. And then that's it. Those are the rules of Ikoria League. A few pages of fine print, but
yeah. I mean, obviously, one thing that we should note is that, like, moving from physical media to online tournaments meant that we could slightly raise the number of minimum games per week. Because obviously, if you're not traveling to the store and sort of taking that opportunity cost of doing that, you've got a bit more free time. With Arena, cards are free and you can play whenever you want. So a lot of barriers to participation are removed. And some people wanted more of a play experience for their bucks. So it seems like moving to 5 was the right thing to do. A lot of people they cram all their matches in the first like few hours of the week, and then they actually want more matches to play. So I think 5 is the kind of sweet spot.
Yeah, and it's also around that time, again, during pandemic, people are home more, people have more free time. So, some people would have liked it if it was 10 matches a week. So increasing from, what was in paper, 3 matches a week to 5 matches a week online was like perfect.
Also of note, right?
One thing that...
sorry, go
on. In the paper days, we had a rule where you could play 1 week's matches extra.
Right.
So if I know
Banking.
I can't be at the store next Friday, let me play my extra matches now. I'll bank 1 week's worth of matches so I can skip next week. I don't get a penalty.
I remember
that was
rule.
Present in the Ikoria rules. The thing is, banking 5 extra matches is a lot, and it was pretty normal that everyone would play as many matches as they could in the first week, so that later on they could have whatever slack they needed. And I think it was in this league where I started playing later in the week, and my first match was against Tim M, who was on his 10th match of the week, and he wrecked me. I'm like, well, this isn't fair. Like, I don't like this rule. This has to change. And
growing pains.
The next league or the league after, we kind of adjusted to have a more appropriate rule, because it wasn't the same situation of, I can't make it to the store, I need to bank all my matches. And that's where we came up with ranges instead, use to this day.
Yeah, so we always say some growing pains and some things that had to change when we sort of jumped medium. So that's fair to say. I think also of note is like looking down to the prize table. So at this time, as I recall, if I recall correctly, we were still providing free tournaments. They were gratis, but they were still sponsored by the local game stores who had an interest in keeping their game playing communities alive while the pandemic happened. So face-to-face games, bless their souls, I think they put, $200 into this one?
Looks like it, yeah.
Yeah, and Three Kings Loot, they threw in some premium packs, right? The little promos that they would normally give out with live
15 promo packs.
Yeah, so, kudos to those stores, for having the, let's say, forethought and compassion to keep the game alive in a time when things looked bleak, right? Things looked really bleak, and they were still like feeding some resources into the online tournament scene in the hopes that, they'll come back, right? They'll remember us when all this stops happening. And without that, right, it would have been very difficult for us to incentivize and attract the players that were part of the physical league series to come online. You might say, well, you don't need prizes to play, but I mean, I remember the Chaos tournament and some other precursor tournaments that we played, and they just seemed like you might as well just be playing really casual paper Magic. There's no stakes, and so there's a little less interest in, like, people take it less seriously for whatever reason. Even if they never use their store credit, I think like having some money on the table, like if you play no stakes poker, it's no fun. And Magic has a lot more, let's say, intrinsic interest in it as a game. I think it's a lot more nuanced and complicated. There's reasons to play it for its own sake, but that little bit of like instrumental sweetener, that idea that like there's a little carrot here that I should be conscientious and work diligently towards getting, I think it adds a lot of focus and tension to our tournament series that we'd be poorer without it.
Yeah, and it's for both players. I like playing against opponents who are playing for something because they scoop less. They're playing harder, which makes me play harder.
Yeah.
And it just is so much better. And notably, talking about the different stores and their sponsorships is, before this, we were playing in store at face-to-face games. Getting Three Kings Loot as a sponsor was great because all of a sudden we have a whole bunch of players from there who hadn't played League, who the face crew didn't know, and they came in, and it kind of doubled our initial player base.
Yes.
And now, after that, I ended up meeting some of them in person, and it did expand our local community beyond like the people who knew each other from Face. Now we also know the people from Three Kings Loot, and now even these days we go to different stores more.
Yeah, like our current partner, Magic Stronghold. Like there are people who are feeding in from there as well now too. So yeah, I think that it's a great thing. It opens it up considerably. In terms of this model, I remember in my more fanciful days when I'd left Montreal. I was working in Chisasibe, up towards the Arctic Circle in Quebec, in the province of Quebec, going stir crazy with COVID. And I remember like feverishly thinking like, okay, we need a store in every country. And there will be payouts in every possible currency. And I was trying to like work out conversion rates. I was trying to like look up stores online and get them interested. And of course, I worked it out. It's like, that's just way too much work and way too little juice for our players. So if it happens organically, that's great. But I'm not gonna force the issue. It's interesting too that like face-to-face, I think they had the most interest in becoming a partner store once we got our feet under us, but they seem to be disinterested in doing so for whatever reason. I remember I talked to Carr about this, and he's like, I don't know. But I mean, they were giving us free store credit at the time, just to, I guess, mention them and put their logo on the rules. But I never knew why Three Kings Loot just couldn't wait to become a partner store, and Face-to-Face couldn't wait to get out. That surprised me. And I wondered at the time if maybe they wanted to be like the exclusive partner or the exclusive sponsor, unless us inviting in other partners, which I think is good for the community, by the way, may have alienated them. I wondered at the time.
Yeah, it's hard to say because you don't know what the factors are of maybe he can't get approval from someone else in the company, or if you just say we're doing this thing online, it's not really tangible.
Right.
To someone, they're like, well, it just can sound very ephemeral, or can sound almost like crackpotty. No, that's not the right word, but it's not tangible versus the person who's used to organizing in-store events and larger tournaments. And then I think the other issue is, again, at that time, a lot's changing, a lot's going on, and so it just might be we don't want to deal with the trouble. We got to sort out what's going on. Challenges affecting our business right now.
Yeah. So I guess that this is kind of like the inside baseball stuff. I feel like we should get to the league design, since that's what we were promising. Do you have any sort of words of praise or criticisms for the Ikoria rule set as it stands? How about the set?
I'll start with not criticism, but one thing that had happened around this time is, once you had left for northern Quebec.
Yes. This is before COVID, by the way. And I left just to fill in our audience. Before COVID, I'd left Montreal, so I handed over the physical tournament series to Johnny to continue on at face-to-face games. And I think it went on for 1.5 tournaments longer.
Well, I mean, we kept going until, I guess, was it Throne of Eldraine was the event that ended up being interrupted by COVID. So I'm not sure how many events we had without you there.
I left in the middle of Modern Horizons, I think, because I was really sad because I had a busted pool for Modern Horizons. And I remember I had to move out of Montreal. I'm like, of all the times, when I finally got a good pool. So I left during Modern Horizons 1. I don't know between Eldraine coming out and...
So there were probably about 3 sets, or maybe Theros was our event that was interrupted by COVID. Okay. We had the finals, I think we finished week 6, and then the finals were months later. We did maybe about 3 tournaments without you, and in that time, me, Tim, and Cameron was involved running it. We made some changes in the rules and we had updated some things, and it felt like we had kind of progressed a little bit. And then for Ikoria, I think you took the rules from probably the last event that you were in and said like, okay, this is what we're doing, and it kind of felt like a step backwards, and that we lost some of the progress from the last couple of leagues. And it's not a criticism. It makes total sense on your side. It just felt like, oh wait, what about this other stuff that we added, implemented, and it just you didn't, you weren't there for that, or you didn't access to that.
I was ignorant of the rules changes, so maybe if you enlighten me, we can recapture that lost progress. Because I was ignorant of the rule set changes, right? I wasn't in the scene, and I sort of like created the online version, independently. And I was like, okay, well, I'll just bring back the gang, and then we'll just keep doing this online. And I don't think anybody else was planning at the time, so it was like, well, it makes sense that I would do it since I'm missing it. I'm caught in the middle of nowhere in northern Quebec, and let's get the gang back together. And I knew that like the online tournament series had. I was in touch with you enough to know that the series had stopped happening, but I don't think you'd forwarded me any of the rule sets, so I didn't know exactly what had changed. So I think it might be educational for me now even to know how the physical tournament series changed in my absence.
I think we're a little too. It's been a little too long, and I can't remember the specifics. Actually, I don't know what they are, but whatever they were, it's like nothing huge. And I think all those changes ended up kind of getting added in the next couple of online leagues. So it's not even a big deal. It's just like the only, slight thing where I'm like, oh man, a progress. But moving on. In terms of
clear communication would help that, right? So if you were like just like, hey, you, check this out, check out these new rules that we've worked with, they're great. And so I mean that's part of the motivation behind getting leagues behind going, because I find like we, at me as TO and members of the LC, there isn't enough face-to-face conversation like this. We don't have a ritual or routine for meeting on the regular, and so I think like more of these conversations are going to lead to more and better, maybe more original league designs. They're probably going to lead to us sort of being able to align our visions, let's say, more efficiently and productively. So, yeah, that's part of the reason I think that I'm intrigued to talk to everybody on the LC about these old leagues and sort of, get back on track with communicating regularly. Even if we're not in the same geographical area, we have the technology. Here we are doing it, right? So we should use it, in my opinion.
To go back a second, another sort of funny thing about Ikoria League was that we weren't totally on, like 100% on Discord at that time. There was still the Facebook Messenger chat that was open and going, which is how we communicated during paper leagues, and kept going for I think at least the first 3 online leagues, which is kind of weird. I think it's a little bit of people being slow to adapt or like wanting to keep the old ways. I kind of went through the old chat, and man, having everything in one channel. It's insane.
Yeah.
And it just shows like how amazing Discord has been for us and how many doors it opens. And they can have this a great structure to work with, because one Facebook chat doesn't work for anything beyond the most like basic stuff. And it's weird to see the rules get posted next to people challenging, next to here are today's standings versus here's some off-topic stuff.
Yeah.
Versus someone's putting a lot of Schwarzenegger, memes up for some reason, and
it's kind of like if like we were all just yelling through one CB radio at each other. Just a lot of chatter,
exactly.
Not a lot of focus.
And it's funny that we kept the messenger channel going for 3 leagues before we finally said, okay, we're done with this. It's all going on Discord. which is kind of an important step.
Yeah.
Because it's weird to have things split. Some people are challenging each other here, some people are challenging each other there, and then that was and a good that we moved on from that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Looking at Ikoria, I guess now we can see that it's what we call a vanilla league, right? It's got the main mechanics of almost every league. I think at the time, if I'm reading correctly, the standard at the time had Ixalan, Rivals of Ixalan, Dominaria, Corset 2019, Guilds of Ravnica, Ravalitas, War of the Spark, Corset 2020. Okay, so those were the ones we could choose from. We could choose anything from Ixalan all the way through to Corset 2021, which I think was all the sets that were on Arena at the time.
So it wasn't just what's in standard, anything on Arena.
You could choose. You could
And I
choose your
think
set.
that's something else. Yeah, and that's something made possible by doing it online, where the paper days, saying you can get a set from 3 years ago doesn't matter because no one has that booster pack, and the store might be sold out. So, but online was like, well, you're just on draft sim, like click any of these formats you want, and you'll get that pack, and there's no cost to it, and there's no extra trouble to it.
Yeah.
So
We're freed from the real, right?
There.
In Magic card terminologies, we're freed from the real, and we're starting to explore that space. Yeah.
And it's funny. It's actually kind of quaint to see. There's, I think it's 12 sets listed here, and they're all looking back now like they're all terrible by today's standard.
Yeah, I mean, at that time, maybe Ikoria was the most dangerous set out there at the time, right? It was busted by the standards of then. It's still pretty good now, even, right? We're seeing that people are buying Ikoria in Outlaws of Thunder Junction League at a pretty good rate, a rate higher than we originally.
War of the Spark 2.
Yes, War of the Spark 2. That's true. I'm a big fan of War of the Spark. This is really my second War of the Spark League. I'm not really so much into Outlaws and Thunder Junction, but can I talk a little bit about Ikoria in terms of its gameplay? I won this league, Johnny. You might say small,
congratulations.
Big fish in a small pond. This was our smallest tournament, so it's the most meager and thumping my chest about beating 20 other competitors or 21 or whatever. Not such a great thing, but
the trophy's the same size.
The trophy's the same size. That's right, and I remember the gameplay being just so. I mean, like any league that you win, you're gonna have great memories of. But I remember riding to victory on the backs of two Gyrudas. One of which would sometimes flip up the other. Yeah, you remember playing against that deck? It was a joyous thing. There might have been a Lutri in there too. I forget. I don't know what's going on. It was just busted, and I think that was before Wizards had fixed it. Remember, they fixed the companion mechanic halfway through the set. They added the 3-mana surcharge halfway through the league. So I got away with playing these companions basically for no extra charge most of the way through the league. So I remember just running. I just remember just running this league, and it was a joyous feeling.
The funny thing is, there were companions everywhere. People have 16 packs of the set, and companions show up one in every 6 packs, I think.
Yeah, it was companions the league.
So, yeah.
Do you have any memories of the gameplay on your end? Do you remember your deck from those days?
Yeah, I remember my deck. It was not great. It was like a green-blue deck, a lot of card draw, but typically short of interaction, and I didn't love it. It wasn't. I don't have the same fond memories of it.
Your first league win was M21. What was it? Your first league win? I forget.
Been M21, which had Ugaruks in my pool.
So you
definitely went to town with that.
Two busted rares of the same in your pack. I remember your deck now. Actually, thinking back to those two groups, I remember being manhandled by those pretty handily. That was miserable.
That's the thing. Like, your joy is somebody else's misery in Magic, right? Like, I'm thinking, oh, 2 Gyrudas, that was a great time. I'm sure that for everybody who played me, it's like, oh, it was rotten.
It's funny with those decks from those leagues. Like, I still have the lists on my Arena account, and if I look at that Core 21 deck that got 22 or 23 wins in that league, like there's cards in the final version of that deck that wouldn't make a day 1 deck in Outlaws of Thunder Junction. Like multiple cards that wouldn't make the cut in a 6-pack 60 card deck today. And I appreciate that the decks are a little quaint, a little simpler. There's cards that are still filler at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I actually like that. I like that's part of the league experience that I like. I like those week 1 decks. At least how they used to be, where it was kind of scrappy. You'd have to use cards that you would never use in any other format. Like a 4-mana 2/2. That when it leaves play, it has some minor effect or something. Like just terrible crap. I liked actually having to create these Rube Goldberg machines that any of the parts on their own look completely harmless, but you put a couple of them together cleverly, and it's like, I never saw that coming. And I think we're still seeing that with Thunder Junction. We're still seeing like nice combinations of cards come up that we've never seen before. It's just that the effects are just way more powerful, and you can take a little less credit for them as a deck designer because so much of the goodness is baked into the set. And for you making your deck, like it's a bit more color by numbers, I guess. The more powerful the cards get, the less discrimination that you need to show as a deck designer. And that feels like maybe we're cutting down on player agency the more that we pump up the power of the cards.
What's funny is like there's probably more cooler effects and more cooler combos you can do, but because the other cards are more powerful, you have less room to explore that and less time in game to do that. Where you can't say, "Hey, let me set up this awesome 3-card combo," because your opponent has a 1-card combo that kills you. It does you 20 damage, over 3 turns.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate, but I think there's a real trade-off there that like the other cool cards are so cool because they're more powerful to compete with the sort of straight-up powerful cards.
All right, Johnny, we're almost at our wrap-up time. Have you got any final comments about Ikoria League?
I think there's not too much to say because it was so vanilla, and the important thing is that it's really about that league. To me, felt like it was about how to make this work, how to implement the tech, how to start a community doing this, and that's like not always well recorded. The initial interactions, the initial feeling of people getting together. You don't see that in a rule set for sure.
That's right, and that's part of the reason that I really wanted to thank you for joining me today, because you were one of the few people who were witness to all the sort of integral steps to that occurring. So you're right; it's not just about a rule set in this case. So I'm very honored to have had you as my first guest, because I think that you've got a lot to say. You were there for all the feels, as well as all the sort of physical reminders that we have of that time.
So yeah, and so the league is a lot more special than the rules or standings may make it look. And in that sense, it's probably one of the best leagues we've ever run. Because it's like the groundbreaker in that sense. Even though not a lot of people were there to experience it, not a lot of people who were there are still part of what we're doing. But it should definitely be held in high esteem. And it ran really well. There weren't major issues or crises. Like it was a real tournament that ran and worked out.
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason. Like the fact that there were no major missteps, sort of cleared the ground for everything that followed. If this had gone awry at the first level, if there was any sort of whiff of a problem, it would have been easy to lay down our stakes and fold the tent, right? But yeah, I think just like Alpha is still the most important design for Magic, Ikoria probably still the most important league for the Arena Gauntlet League, because this was the moment when we jump with both legs from one media to the other with no guarantee that any of it is going to stick. And so I suppose next one will be M21, right? That's the next one in the sequence. We both got it. We both got our trophies in succession. Got in there early to our benefit. So yeah, that'll be our next episode, looking back at M21. Thanks again, Johnny, for joining me. It's been a pleasure to catch up and to reminisce.
And thank you, Chris, for your vision and your ambition to kind of make this all happen and to grow it and push it forward, which I and many, many, many other people have appreciated and kind of reaped the benefits from. So thank you.
That's very kind, man. Thanks again for coming out, and we'll see you next time for M21. Bye, y'all.